Hi, everybody. Wow, so many lovely familiar faces.
Hi, Karen.
Hi.
I was thinking about wearing a tuxedo or something more formal, but.
Well, Paula, you can do that next time.
Okay, thank you. I should wear a hat or something.
I'm wearing a necklace. I haven't worn a necklace or jewelry or makeup in so long.
There you
Hi,
go.
Karen.
Hi, Una.
Great.
Well, we have over 60 people who signed up. We don't expect to have anywhere near that number actually attending. But I think what we will do is just give a minute or two to let people arrive, like we would if we were all meeting in the boardroom. But yeah, welcome everybody. Hi Marta, good to see you. We're really excited to share what we're learning with you. But big disclaimer, we are by no means experts, so I'll talk about that in just a second. Caitlin, what do you think? Should we go ahead and get started?
Yeah, I think so. Let's get started, and if folks join late, that's fine too.
Okay, perfect. So, hi everybody, I'm Karin Demarest, Vice President for, Vice President for Programs. That was our old title, Vice President for Community Impact at Community Foundation Sonoma County. And I'm so excited to see so many folks here, and really excited to be doing this with my two fabulous colleagues, Caitlin Childs, who's Director of Communications and Marketing. Is that?
Just
communications. And Ariana Diaz de Leon, she is now, I'm happy to announce, our Senior Program Officer. Ariana just received a well-deserved promotion. So this is a cross-departmental effort, and I'm gonna start by just welcoming all of you and turning it over to Ariana. Oh, actually, I'm gonna say a little bit more. We really appreciate you, and we really appreciate that you are entrusting us with sharing some information with you. As you've probably experienced Zoom, all of a sudden life is Zoom. And so because of that, we recognize, and Caitlin having some real skill in communications and expertise there, said, well, let's put together a little guide for the Community Foundation. Well, this guide is brilliant, and we thought, why not share it with everybody else? So that's what we're doing. I facilitate a lot of meetings, so I said, hey, why don't I share a little bit about facilitation? And Ariana's had some experience with Zooms where they play with some tools. So we are not saying that we are the Zoom experts, but what we know is that peer-to-peer learning right now is really important. And we recently hosted a quarterly coffee. Some of you may have attended. I know some of you did. Our quarterly coffee where we heard from all of our nonprofit partners, we want to collaborate more. We want to learn from each other. Peer-to-peer learning is something that we can do, and this platform really lends itself to it. So we thought, why not share what we're learning, and hopefully potentially learn from you as well some of the things you're learning about hosting a Zoom meeting that is engaging and fun and somehow mirrors the experience of being in the same room together. So to start off, I'm going to hand it over to Ariana, and she is going to lead us through some opening questions.
Thank you, Karen. And I just want to reiterate our appreciation for having you all here. We do have the chat feature, which you're welcome to use if you want to throw in a question or maybe just comment on how you've been using a feature yourself. But we're going to start off with a couple of opening questions. And we're going to do this using one of our favorite interaction tools. So I'm going to go ahead and share a whiteboard right now. And now all of you should be able to see the whiteboard. And at the top, if you click on View Options and then select Annotate, you're going to be able to contribute to this in a moment. So I'm going to go ahead and add the opening question on here first for everyone to see.
And as Ariana types, just to reiterate, to find the annotation tools, at the top of your screen, there's a green bar that says you're viewing Ariana Diaz de Leon's screen. To the right of it, there's a little arrow menu called View Options. If you click on that arrow menu, you can click through to annotate. And we're going to want you to use the text feature first.
So if you go over to text, you can, the default is blue. You can choose that to answer this question, or you can change the font color. But we would like you, if you'd like to contribute, to go ahead and write on the whiteboard in reply to this question. What is one aspect of Zoom you really appreciate?
And a question we've been asked before is, do we see you typing? Well, we saw Ariana typing because she's hosting this whiteboard. But until you press enter or click out of your text box, we're not going to see you typing. It just shows up like magic.
And so this is one tool that we've been using to make the check-in and opening questions go by quicker in a way that everyone can contribute if they choose to. If you'd rather not answer this question via text, in a moment, once we have more people typing in, you will be able to just read the answers and decide if any of those resonate with you. And we're going to use one of the other tools here to have you provide input to those that resonate the most with you. All right, so we're seeing quite a few different things on here. Ease of using the platform, having my kids see the people I work with, that's awesome. Being with people instantly. So now I want you to go to the stamp. And then from there you can select a heart, a star, a check mark, an arrow. Select the one that you want and then go ahead and put the stamp on the one that resonates with you. And you can do several as well.
That's the other thing is we let you kind of navigate.
So something I love about this whiteboard feature is it's a little bit messy and it's informal. And I think that's a really nice feature to have when you're trying to gear towards interaction. And I also really like that that you can see what other people are feeling and see what resonates. So you can find where everybody is feeling the same thing. By using the stamp and annotating, it just lets you kind of reflect on how you're not alone, even if you are literally alone in your house.
Yeah, so we can see that one thing that really resonates with people is being able to tailor Zoom to needs and preferences, seeing everyone at once, seeing pets and kids, that's a popular one. And it seems like a lot of these are really resonating with people. So now we're gonna move on to the next question. And what I'm gonna do is clear everything on here. And now I'm gonna go ahead and add text once again for the next question.
And I'm seeing a question in chat, where do you find the whiteboard feature? So the way, if you want to host a meeting and use the whiteboard, you'll click down to share screen, and please don't do this right now, but you'll click down to share screen and you will be able to, one of the top pop-ups is going to be whiteboard. That's where you can type, can create a whiteboard for yourself and share it for your guests. And I have some documentation. I have a documentation guide that kind of goes over some of these tools in more depth.
So feel free now to use your text and respond to this question. What is one aspect of Zoom you find especially challenging? And one thing to note is that this is anonymous, so people don't know who is writing what. So you can be as honest as you'd like to be.
And yes, I will be sharing this guide with you all after the webinar finishes. And then if anybody is still needing advice on how to find the annotate tool that you can add to the whiteboard, go up to the top of your screen where you see a green, you are viewing Ariana Diaz de Leon's screen, and then click on the view options next to it and select annotate.
And just like we did with the previous one, now that we have quite a few answers, feel free to go to the stamp button, select the stamp that you want, and then add the stamp to the comments that really resonate with you.
And somebody just asked, is there any way to make sure that people are not annotating on top of one another? I haven't found a way to do that, but I'm definitely going to look into it.
I do think we have maybe one person who's not muted, but we'll work on muting that individual. So it looks like we have quite a few responses about things that are challenging in Zoom. It can be flat. There's a lot of eye strain. I think we've all experienced that. Just have, oh.
I unmuted you on accident, sorry.
It's really hard to read body language when you just have this square box. And you know, it's a lot of learning and learning on our own from our homes to learn how to use this new tool. So we definitely hope that this Zoom webinar will provide you with some useful tools that you can bring back to your own work. And so with that, I'm gonna clear this and stop sharing and hand it over to Karin to do an overview of our goals for this meeting.
All right. So some basics. What we're trying to do here is learn together. As I said earlier, we have Caitlin did put together the guide that she is going to share with everybody. And in terms of what my role is going to be, I facilitate meetings. And I think part of what we're recognizing is that we only see each other from here up in the Zoom. And one of the Zoom fatigue things that has been recognized as Zoom creating Zoom fatigue is that when we typically take in information using our all of our senses and you know, we read each other, we read the body, we read language that is not coming just from words, and it's very tiring to just see each other from here up. So I'm going to try to give some tools around facilitation that can make it more dynamic. So let's turn it over to Caitlin. She can do more of the technical side of things, and then I'll come back and do the other piece.
Okay, so we're going to start by going over some of the guide that I've put together. The full guide has some more like step-by-step details for you, and if you have questions on it, like I put at the end of it, I'm open to getting emails, answering questions if I can, and then if you have suggestions on how to improve it, that's great too. So we'll start by just talking about steps to think about before you create a meeting. So Zoom has two different types of meeting tools. They have meetings and they have webinars. And meetings are more interactive. It gives everybody an opportunity to join via video so that we can all see each other, gives everybody the opportunity to speak if you're unmuted. And webinars are a little bit more passive. It's a one-way presentation. So that's one thing to think about. And Erica, yes, it is being recorded, so we will share that with you after the meeting. And I'm going to let Ariana compile more questions from the chat as they come up, and I'll try to address them when we wrap this part up. So in terms of thinking about what type of meeting you want, if you're used to hosting meetings in person that are collaborative and community oriented, I really recommend thinking about using the meeting feature rather than the webinar feature, which can feel a little bit more flat. For the rest of this guide, I'm going to talk about what the meeting feature looks like and then how to use that. So one thing to keep in mind would be your staff roles. I think it's really hard to host Zoom meetings, especially for large groups, as just one person. If possible, assign 2 people to run your meeting with you at minimum. You know, the more people you have kind of working alongside you, the better. 3 people I've found is kind of like the perfect fit in terms of hosts. And I've separated out some roles. Your facilitator and host is the person who's going to welcome people, present during the meeting, and then you're going to want to have a technical lead who's in charge of managing participants in the waiting room, muting people, managing the chat, etc. The first and most important thing you can do when you're hosting a Zoom meeting is practice ahead of time. This is going to solve so many of your problems already. And I know it's so basic, but like, I really just want to cover some of those basic things just to reinforce how important they are. So before you do a Zoom meeting like this, schedule a practice session with your co-hosts at least a day ahead of the meeting. Make sure everybody can connect, practice using the waiting room feature, test out your screen sharing, make sure you're really confident in using all of those controls. And then practice your agenda, talk through what you want to talk over in the meeting. And use the chat to chat with each other so that you're familiar with it. And then you're going to want to cross-train your co-hosts. I can't tell you how important this is, because if anything technical goes wrong during your meeting, it's really vital that your co-hosts can step in and take over. So you'll want to make sure that all of your co-hosts are familiar with the controls as well and are prepared to jump in. So have each of them take turns sharing a screen, muting each other, and have them practice a little bit of their hosting and speaking skills. And then the morning of your meeting, you're going to want to check for any last minute RSVPs, send the Zoom information to them. And then I really recommend sending an email to your internal group, giving them the RSVP list with everybody's name so that people are all familiar ahead of time with who's coming. Include the Zoom meeting link just in case it's not on their calendar or they just need a quick reference to find it. And then remind them to join in at least 10 minutes before the event to get any last minute tech issues sorted out. For all of the meetings we've hosted, we usually meet on our Zoom call about 10 to 15 minutes ahead of time. And it's been invaluable in making sure that we're all there, making sure that we all have any last minute details to talk through. And then with our guests in the waiting room, you know, we have that ability to do any last minute talk beforehand. Immediately before the meeting, I recommend about 30 minutes before, open your RSVP list in a separate window, add a column called attended. You can do this ahead of time too. And then close all of the applications on your computer that do not have to do with your Zoom meeting so that you're not getting Outlook or Slack notifications as you're hosting your meeting. And then just double check your settings in Zoom to ensure that your meeting is set up with the waiting room and everything else. And in terms of the settings, my guide, which I'll share with you, has screenshots of like every setting I think you should make. So it's kind of a step-by-step with screenshots of those guides, like which things to check. So then I want to just encourage you to, you know, as a host, use the chat. Make sure that if you have instructions or you're giving people kind of an opening question or something like that, add those instructions to the chat as a reference for everybody while you are also saying them out loud. And then you can encourage participation, asking for people to share questions or advice in the chat so that you can address them. And today we'd love to hear your advice and your questions. So if you've seen something awesome in Zoom, just let us know in the chat. We'd love to know about it too. And I think everybody else would like to share and learn from you as well. And then in terms of managing noise, you can go through your gallery view and mute people automatically. You can also use the mute all button in your participants list. And what I've just figured out today is that pressing mute all does mute your co-hosts. So that is no longer a recommended option for you. So if something goes wrong, and I think this is a question that comes up the most, is what do you do if something goes wrong at the start of your meeting? And my first advice is if you have guests waiting in your waiting room, or if you've already admitted people to your meeting, you've got to start the meeting and try to troubleshoot as you go. That's why it's so important to have your technical lead and your host as a backup, because if you have people present, pausing and holding them there is really hard for them because they don't know what's going on and you do. So if something is going wrong, over communicate, repeat that something is going wrong and that you're working to solve it. And if that lasts more than a few minutes, I think you should really just start the meeting and go. A lot of the issues I've seen people having is connecting with live streaming, that sort of thing. And just remember that for the people who are already in your meeting, who are not watching on YouTube or Facebook, those people are there and they're spending their time with you. So it's really important to just try to use their time wisely and not waste it. And then again, like I reminded you ahead of time, building redundancies and planning ahead is going to be a huge feature for you. So as you practice, you're testing everything out. As your co-hosts are being trained on what to do if they need to step in. If you're doing a PowerPoint presentation, share it with all of your co-hosts ahead of time so that they can open it on their computers if they need to jump in for you. If you're hosting a moderated question and answer session with guest speakers, make sure that everybody, including the guest speakers, has copies of the questions ahead of time so that if somebody can jump in and start moderating themselves even. And then build in interactivity where you can. So we just saw that the whiteboard feature is a great way to encourage interaction, and it's really effective in large groups because you're probably not going to want to go around one by one and have everybody check in and answer a question, because that can actually take your whole meeting time. So this is a nice, faster way to do an opening question or an interaction. And then of course the chat again is great for that too. And then if you are going to be having people speak, I think Karin can talk to this a little bit more in terms of managing the facilitation side of things, but I'm just going to say it's a good idea to have your moderator role be the person who calls people out, because waiting for like popcorn style people to pop in, it's a little bit more challenging. And then after the meeting, you're going to want to review your recording. Zoom sends you a link to it as soon as your meeting concludes, and Zoom has a great guide on their website for how to use the trimming tools to cut out like the beginning and end of your Zoom if you have like a bit of time that's happening before your meeting starts, essentially. And then send a follow-up email to all of your guests. And now I want to talk about some considerations for aesthetics. And the first thing I have to show you is that, or share, is that lighting makes a huge difference. And this all requires you to just do as much testing as you possibly can. So I would tell you, if you have like 30 minutes and to spare in your day, and do this especially during the daytime, because that's the same time that's the same time that you're doing your work. It's the same time that you're doing your Zoom calls. It's the same time that your light outside your window is happening. So testing at night is not recommended. So try to just recreate everything as naturally as you can. And then look at your camera and computer placement. You're going to want to elevate your computer on a stack of books so that the camera is slightly above your head and angled downwards. That's a really flattering angle, and that's why so many selfies are shot like this. And then look at your lighting and play with it. So you're going to want to be lit from the front of your face, not behind you. So my encouragement would be to find some different table lamps. If you have one, if you have two, try them all out. And then try to put them behind your camera so that it's lighting back towards your face. And I have some screenshots that show what different lighting looks like. So here, there's too much backlighting, and that tricks the camera into thinking that you have enough light, and then it doesn't light your own face. So backlighting here would be the windows behind me in the room, in my living room. So to solve for that, I need to close my curtains. If I light my room from above, that is also not ideal because it kind of makes your face look shiny. It's a harsher light and it adds a lot of shadows under your eyes, which can make you look really tired. And then side lighting, again, I'm sitting in my dining room. I have windows to my right, and so I have to compensate for that with a lamp on my left. And so the best lighting, my setup here is that I have, my computer, I have windows to my right, and then I have my lamp on my left. And it looks like what you're seeing right now. So all of that is to say that, you know, try this if you can. If you have a setup where you can play. It's going to be, it's going to make you feel better, and the more confident you feel in your presentation in Zoom, the easier time you're going to have being that public speaker. And then a little bit more about your background. A white or plain colored wall that's directly behind you, very flat, it can be a little flat. So I would encourage you to play with this to try out an angled placement for your desk or table that puts you at an angle to the wall rather than parallel to it. Place a plant or fresh flowers behind you. It adds some visual interest to your background and some depth. It gives other people's eyes something to look at that's not just your face. So for me, you know, I have flowers here behind me, and I have, you know, this other room behind me. So it gives people kind of 3 sets of depth to look at, and makes it look a little bit more dimensional. And then if you can avoid it, try not to place a window behind you. That'll lead to too much backlighting. If nothing else, I recommend that. And then don't forget to check your background before you start your meetings. Look for distractions like boxes, things on the floor, etc. I had a bunch of boxes in my living room before this, and it was like kind of embarrassing when I realized that everybody could see my like mess. So so that's just a nice tip to remember as well. And yes, I think that's it. And then somebody has a question. Please share how to get that little stand on your laptop when I talked about the background lighting. So I bought a stand on Amazon for like $25, I think, and it's just a laptop stand. And what I did ahead of time was I measured the height of it, and I held up my laptop in front of me and kind of estimated like how high do I want it to be in order for my camera to be above my face. And then I looked for a stand that was that same number of inches. And then somebody said, can I talk about a meeting room where people are held for a meeting? Julie, I think I'm going to need a little bit more information about that. If you want to unmute or just type a little bit more in the chat, that'd be great.
Caitlin, I'm thinking that might be the waiting room.
Right, where people are held before they come into a meeting, or the breakout.
Oh yes, the waiting room. So your waiting room has an ability, you have an ability to customize your waiting room. My guide does go over that with some screenshots for it. You're going to want to customize it with your logo at the very least, and I would recommend writing a slightly more friendly welcome message than the one that Zoom has for the default. And that's just a nice way, you know, you don't have a ton of control over the looks of it, but that's, you know, at minimum, that's a recommendation would be share your logo, change your greeting message, and my guide will cover that. Great. So you'll get to see the whole guide shortly, and for now, I'm going to pass it on to Karin to talk more about facilitation.
So I don't know how many of you have ever performed on a stage, but if you have, you know that your experience is completely altered by having an audience. And so you just give something different when you have an audience and when you're receiving feedback from an audience. One of the reasons that Zoom is so challenging is that you are not getting any feedback. And that's why the using of the mute button is something that you want to consider. In a smaller meeting, we hosted a meeting yesterday with our grants committee. People that all know each other well and have been in the room together. There was about 15 of us total, maybe 12. And we didn't have everybody mute, because if there was laughter, if there were, you know, oohs and ahs, if somebody wanted to jump in and contribute, that is a more organic way of being in a meeting. So our first impulses when we first started doing Zoom was everybody mute. We can't. And it can be essential if there is a lot of background sound. But in order to create a more organic and get that feedback from each other, I would suggest when you can to go ahead and not mute everybody and ask them to contribute and ask them to interrupt you. I don't know if you've noticed, if you hear yourself, but when I walk away from having done a Zoom meeting, I'm like, why am I talking like this? Like you have a Zoom voice, and suddenly like my Zoom voice is this weird, like kind of monotone, a little bit louder, like I'm talking to my grandma who can't quite hear me. It's this weird Zoom thing. And so try to bring some consciousness, like, can you modulate your voice differently? Can you bring your tone up and down? Can you lean in a little bit and lean back? So some way to bring the dynamism of your personality back into this forum. And it takes a little bit of consciousness, because you know, I am a hand talker, so that really helps me. If I talk with my hands, again, it kind of brings me, but if I'm sitting here like this, which I'm prone to do because we all are, it flattens my experience. In terms of facilitating for a meeting, you just need to use a lot of the same things that you do anyway, like prepare really strong questions. When you put those questions out there, and you're going to call on people, for example, if we were all going to answer a question, and we've done this, we held a virtual coffee, we had about 35 people in the room, and we asked everybody to speak. It's really helpful to say, okay, we're going to go to Paul, then Una, then Joella. So everybody knows, you know, that they're coming up. They can start to prepare by taking their mics off or putting their mics on if they've been muted. They can start to think about when they're coming. So I usually call people out in threes. If you're facilitating a discussion, let people know how they're going to participate. In this case, we have a lot of people who are multitasking because they're not on video. It's okay, I understand. But if you are going to ask people to answer a question, then tell them how to do that, either by using the reactions button at the bottom there. You can see, you know, you can applaud, you can, you know, give a thumbs up. So that's one way. I feel like it's easier to just raise your hand. I mean, this is really, you can really see somebody raising their hand. And then to say, okay, I see that Una's just raised her hand and Jeremy has raised his hand. And so we're gonna go Jeremy, we're gonna go Una, Jeremy, and then Caitlin. So that people know that you've seen them, you've acknowledged them, and you're getting them ready to have that discussion with you. Change it up. So if you're using Zoom for your team meetings, it is really fun to add some differences, like hat day. We all wore hats, and look at how much it changes. Thank you, Erica. It changes the visual dynamic. You want to change up this thing, we're looking at each other like this, change it up a little bit. When we had hat day, Caitlin wore like 10 different hats through the course of the day. It was really fun. Or how about starting with your, you know, personalizing it. It is amazing that we get to like be in each other's lives now in a really different way. Like if my kids walk through here, I could say, hey, Jasper, come say hello. And like suddenly what has been an unknown world to him, my work world, there's faces to it. He can hear me talking. Like I don't think we should pretend like that's not so. In fact, we should embrace that and let the kids and the pets and the life that we lead become integrated with what we're doing together now. It's a different world. So, you know, and then do fun things like, what's your favorite album day? And you can come in and share your favorite album, or, you know, just allow the integration of life to be a part of this world. Let time.
Karin, I was just going to say, that's something that we were talking about, is like, because we're at home, this is a totally unique time, and we should try to take advantage of it and find ways to take advantage of it. We can't bring our favorite painting to our office to show and tell. But like, when was the last time you got to do show and tell? Probably first or second grade. Now there's an opportunity to do it any day you have a meeting. And so it adds kind of a fun aspect, and it does make you, something a lot of people have reflected on is that they like that we see more of each other. Like, we see our homes, we're kind of feeling more personal. So like show and tell kind of just reinforces that.
We even had a goat to come to one of our meetings. One of our virtual coffees, there was a goat in our meeting. It was amazing. The other thing is, you know, time is, I'm sure everybody's experiences, time is crazy. But we don't have to have the meeting last an hour. Hi, we don't have to have the meeting last an hour if it doesn't need to last an hour. So, you know, the freedom of the platform is something to just take advantage of. And a 5-minute Zoom meeting you can really accomplish a lot in 5 minutes. So we're scheduling meetings for an hour, but that doesn't mean they can't end in 35 minutes. Use the tools, but don't overuse the tools. Sometimes that just can be a distraction. Watch for fatigue. I was in my meeting yesterday. I was watching to see when people were starting to drift away. You can tell when someone's texting. You can tell when someone's checking their email. If that's starting to happen, those are the things that inform you as a facilitator to change it up, to move on, or to call it a day. I recommend, as uncomfortable as it is, if you are facilitating a meeting, record it and then watch yourself. How is your voice coming? What's your timing like? Are you flat? Is your Zoom voice really annoying? Like, what is it that you can do as a facilitator to kind of change it up? It's what they do in the theater. You know, you would look at yourself, you get notes from your director, be your own director. And then you can, and it is advised that you turn yourself off. If that part of what has been recognized as creating Zoom fatigue is watching yourself all of the time. And if you are in a meeting, you're not going to be looking at yourself. So, Caitlin, could you tell them how to turn their own view off?
Yeah, so if you're on your computer right now, to turn off your self view, you're going to want to hover over your picture in the gallery. And there's 3 little dots that'll show up next to the mute button. Well, maybe I just see the mute button. But there's 3 little dots that show up. And if you click on them, at the bottom, you're going to see hide self view. That makes you go away. I can't tell you how useful that is as a tool, especially in meetings that are just 1 or 2 people, because then if you turn yourself off, all of a sudden, all you're seeing are the couple of people you're talking to. It's really powerful. And then if you want to get back to showing yourself, at the top right, once you've hidden, there's going to be a little button that says show self view. And so you'll just click on that and your video will pop back up for you. I often switch back and forth between having my view on and off. And one funny thing is, like, you know, if you have kids or pets and they're going to be behind you, sometimes it's helpful to just turn yourself on for a second and just like check, has anything gone amiss? And then you can turn off your self view again.
Great. I think that's it in terms of facilitation, but I would love to hear if anyone else has had any, you know, experiences facilitating a meeting that was like, wow, that felt really good. I actually feel like I've connected with people. Does anyone have anything they'd like to add? You can raise your hand. Erica.
So we've been doing Zoom meetings with our Safe School Ambassadors, which are kids, 4th grade through 12th grade. And our trainers have been facilitating them. And they've had a couple of activities that they've done within the meeting where people are actually getting up and moving. And I think it was Caitlin that said, you know, we see, or maybe it was Karin, that we experience life with our full bodies. And so there was something really powerful about stepping back, and we did push-ups on the wall or on the counter, and seeing everybody kind of move and then come back. There was just something that really helped people, I think, connect after that. And we've done several of those. We've passed a ball, Karen, that's for you. And then Karen catches it. And, you know, it's
Nice. Brianna.
exactly.
That's good. I love that. That's great. Thank you, Erica. And Erica, congratulations on your new role at Community Matters.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
One other thing about the hats too, I happen to have this nearby, but we do for our weekly staff meeting, we have a new theme every week. And so we've done hats, we've done, we're doing tropical next week. We've done wigs, we've done a bunch of things. And last week was bundle up because it got colder. And so, you know, people came with scarves and hats and there's just something really fun about connecting in that way. Thank you. This has been a great, great, great Zoom.
Thank you, Erica. Anyone else have any creative ideas like that?
Karen, I think we have a couple questions from the chat if you want to talk about them.
Absolutely.
The first one was, if you're leading a Zoom call, what is the best way to keep within time constraints without cutting people off?
Well, you know, that's always a good question. And I would say sometimes you do have to cut people off. That's just the way it is to keep timing. But the way to do that, I always recommend, is to mention that you're going to have to do that in advance. So that I do in meetings if we're in person or in Zoom, that, you know, my job as facilitator is to keep us on track. And in order to do that, I know some of you might get really excited when you're talking, and I'm going to have to cut you off if we to keep us you know, on timing. And then you actually have to do it, because then the rest of everybody else in the meeting is kind of entrusting you to take that role. And so I always make, you know, some funny joke or something about it, like, oops, 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 I'm going to have to cut you off there. Or halfway through, if you start to see people are starting to get really verbose, if they're all answering a question, you just say, hey, by the way, I'm going to cut you off. We're starting to get a little longer than I had hoped. So you do have to play an active role in that.
Yeah. So, okay, we've gotten a few more questions. One of them is, how do you get your picture to show instead of a black screen if you don't want to be on video? And I can cover that. So right now I'm going to stop my video, and now it just shows my picture. I'm going to turn myself back on for a moment just so that you can see. There is a way to change your picture. And the way to do that is to pop up any of the settings menus in Zoom. So like for now, if you want to practice this with me, go to the bottom left of your screen, and where the mute button is, there's going to be a little caret arrow. Click on that caret arrow and select audio settings. That's going to bring you to your audio settings, but you're going to want to navigate on the left down to your profile settings. And should pop up your profile name with a place to put a picture, your name, and some buttons to say edit my profile, view advanced features, that sort of thing. If you click on your profile picture, even if you don't have a picture, it should pop up a feature where you can change your picture or upload one yourself. It might make you go to the Zoom website. So if you don't have a Zoom account that you've registered online, create one. It's free to create an account, and then you can upload your picture there on the website. So that's one question. And then somebody else had a question about, is there a way for people to listen to music while they're in the waiting room? That's an interesting question. I don't think there is. The customize the waiting room features are pretty limited, but I've written it down and I'm going to try to look into it. And then another question was, can we go over how to show videos as part of a Zoom meeting? So I think maybe you're talking about, Pamela, could you share, do you mean like a YouTube video or something like that? I don't know if Pamela, you're able to answer that. Yes. Okay, great.
Yeah.
So for YouTube videos or something like that, you're also going to want to use the share screen option. And you'll just want to have already chosen your video ahead of time and have it open in your web browser. So once you've done that, and I don't have a video open in my web browser ready to share, so and I feel a little nervous doing this on the fly, but we'll see what we can do. Have your web browser open, have your YouTube video open, and then you're going to want to click on share screen and click on your video. Of course, I need to pick a video, which is very embarrassing for me potentially, but I think we're going to look at this penguin cam from the Academy of Science. So let me see if I can do this the way I think it's done. I'm going to click on share screen, and then the web page I have is going to pop up, and there's an option to choose at the bottom left that says share computer sound. Click that, because that's going to be the most important thing you do, so that everybody who's viewing your video can share. I've done this right. I don't actually know if I like this sound, so I'm going to mute it, because I love penguins and I love the Academy of Science. So hopefully that was a good demonstration. Let's see. Ariana, are there any other questions?
Yes, we have, where is the raise your hand feature?
The raise your hand feature shows up in Zoom webinars, but I don't think it shows up in Zoom meetings. So if you wanted to raise your hand right now, you could do, literally hand raise, or you could do a reaction like, a clap or a thumbs up. Yeah.
Oh, I'm curious if if you're just practicing, or if Elizabeth and Linnea, if you guys want to say anything. Okay, great.
Okay, and then Linnea, I think you asked a question here. Have you heard of any best practice for nonprofits using Zoom for donor engagement in lieu of in-person meetings? Any little touches to make the donor feel special and be engaged? So I don't know about best practices, but I can share some things that some of our colleagues have shared with me, which is they've been working with our donors either one-on-one or we've hosted like group meetings for our donors. The one-on-ones, we've actually had better luck getting in front of our donors right now and meeting on Zoom than we ever do trying to get them to meet us in person. And we found that our donors are almost always dressed super casually, which is really different. So normally in day-to-day work with our donors, we're really dressed up. And we meet either in our offices or occasionally at their homes. Right now, our donors are more accessible, more willing to meet with us, and more likely to be casual. So we're trying to meet them where they are with that. And we're also noticing that, for larger, rather than one-on-one, but for larger Zoom meetings with multiple donors, they're also more likely to be interested right now. So what we're sharing with them right now is things like, what are the community needs? Ariana has hosted a few of those. So Ariana, if you have any other feedback about what that experience is like, I'd love to hear it.
One thing, we've hosted 2 of them so far, and it was actually a great way to bring in many donors together at once to hear that information that we had to share. And the way we structured it was the first half of the meeting was us presenting about the community needs. And then the second half, we opened it up so that they could ask questions, they could give some comments. And for some of them, it was their first Zoom meeting. So it really was a way for them to not only learn about the needs, but just get some interaction time, and get to out loud say, this is how I'm feeling about the situation, and this is what I'm concerned about. So making sure to build that in, the human piece of it is really, really important, because right now a lot of us are cut off from that social aspect. So during those meetings, it's important to, share the information, say what you want to say, but also allow for that feedback and for somebody to just kind of come to terms with what they're experiencing and be able to add on that piece as well.
I think too, one other thing that kind of follows along with my advice to practice is this was some of the first Zoom meetings that our donors have done. A lot of our donors are retired. They're not coming to Zoom meetings on a daily basis. So we've actually offered practice sessions with them one-on-one. So if they've expressed maybe uncertainty about how to use Zoom, we've scheduled one-on-one meetings with them, just 10 or 15 minutes, for them to practice and get familiar with Zoom ahead of the meeting. So it gives them confidence that they can join the meeting when they want to, and they'll know how to interact and how to use the tools. So we show them how to turn their video on and off, how to mute and unmute themselves, how to find the chat window, that sort of thing. And I think that that's made some donors feel really, really confident. We've also had donors who have asked, how do I maintain anonymity? I know maybe I want to join this call, but I don't want other people to know, who I am. We've experimented with some options, and we haven't found a great way to be truly anonymous in a Zoom call, unless you create a Zoom account under a false name, and then that's a little more advanced than most of our donors want to do. So for the most part, we've offered to record those meetings and then share them with them. And for donors who are a little shy, they've really appreciated that.
I would just add that it is it's a time where, the way we typically work with our donors from a philanthropic planning standpoint is we offer ourselves as advisors, but we're not as proactively, we don't fundraise. We are there as their advisor. But we have found, probably more so than any of the disasters that we have been working through in the last few years, is that our donors are really eager to understand what your needs are as organizations, as well as the needs of your clients. So I would really recommend being very proactive in reaching out to your donors to share not just what you're learning from the people that you serve, but how is this impacting you as an organization? What are you doing to mitigate those impacts? How are you getting creative? Are you applying for CARES Act funding? All of those things, there's an eagerness and a desire to know. Additionally, I think we've done both one-on-one meetings, but the opportunity for donors to be in partnership with each other. So, not too big, but not too small. Opportunities to get 4 donors together. And include their partners, that really sees the moment when people are isolated and concerned and wanting to support.
Yeah. If anybody else has any questions, we'd love to answer them. But I think we also have a little another whiteboard that we want to ask you some questions on, just to kind of calibrate where you're at in terms of Zoom. So this might guide whether we do this type of session again, or what kind of content we might want to cover next time if we do. And I'm going to let Ariana take the lead on this.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Great. So now for those of you that joined the meeting late, if you just go up to view options and then select annotate, that's where you will be able to find the tools to respond to this question. So now what we'd like to know is, what aspect of Zoom do you feel least confident about? So feel free to pick your text color and then go ahead and respond. I'll give you about a minute or so. And then once you are done commenting, then you can once again use the stamp tool to select any of the comments that have really resonated with you. Also, feel free to draw or play around with it. I know that's lots of fun.
So something we've done in our staff meetings to mix things up is we actually use the whiteboard to do a round of Pictionary. That's what the game is called, right? Is Pictionary when you draw things? Okay. So we did a round of Pictionary where we used private messages in Zoom to send prompts to people as they came up, and tell them, you know, draw a redwood tree or whatever. And then that person got to annotate on the whiteboard using the drawing tool, and everybody else guessed in chat. And it was that, if you do that, make sure everybody unmutes ahead of time, because there's guaranteed to be laughter, and it is hilarious, and you kind of do want to hear people laugh, especially.
All right, so it looks like we've gotten quite a few comments about aspects of Zoom that we're still feeling a little bit less confident about. So go ahead and pick out your stamp and then select anything that really resonates with you. We have managing others in the meeting as facilitator. Interactive features are new. Encouraging other staff to use special features and engagement. And then concerns about participants who freeze up, if there's any technical issues, breakout rooms, also using video, settings for the waiting room. So it's, you know, more of those advanced features in Zoom.
Maybe we should end by playing around the Pictionary.
Oh my gosh, I haven't prepared one. Ariana, do you have an idea of a Pictionary?
I can come up with one, definitely.
Okay.
Do we want to use the spinner?
No, that's too complicated.
Okay.
We'll do that for Zoom on Zoom 2.0. Are you gonna, Ariana, are you gonna draw?
Oh, you want me to draw? I could.
Unless anybody wants to raise your hand and volunteer to be the drawer.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and clear all the drawings.
Erica, it looks like
Oh, we have Erica.
awesome.
Okay, good. Well, the spinner, where is the spinner? You know what, we'll send it out because it's a link, right? You have to go to the
Yeah.
web to put down the spinner.
There's just a nice like Wheel of Fortune style spinner that you can pre-type people's names into and then click it, and it's a website. So I'll share that link with you.
Okay, so Ariana, you're sending something to Erica?
Yes.
And then we all guess in the chat.
As soon as I find her, I will.
Oh, she's anonymous. She's listed. Oh no, now she's not. She was for a second.
Erica, do you want to just come up with something and draw, and then we'll all try to guess? No, you want me to? Okay, okay, let me go ahead and go back to the chat feature real quick.
You're having a hard time finding her. I can just draw something too.
Okay. Or if you can chat to Erica, that'd be great. If you can chat her privately.
Erica, I just sent you a suggestion on something.
Got it. Great. Thanks, Caitlin.
I think this is evidence of, like, you know how we feel somehow that when we're on the computer and we're in this, we have to be good or on all the time.
Oh, Gina. Very quick. I think Gina's our winner.
That must be a record.
Nice one.
Yeah.
All right, and we're right at 1:59.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, everybody. I hope you found things in here that were valuable to you, and that you got to feel a little lightness in your day by joining us today. That's always a goal. If you have any feedback for us, anything